Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. This is Plan Once, Export in Multiple Formats with Lutheran Service Builder. It's going to be a complete overview webinar where we'll start at the basics and quickly work our way into more advanced techniques. So I'm not going to show everything, so it's a broad overview. You'll get the core concepts of planning a service and then being able to see the different kinds of export formats we have. My name is Peter Frank. I'm the Senior Manager of Church Supplies here at Concordia Publishing House. I've been with our organization for almost 11 years at this point. And my history with Lutheran Service Builder is a little bit shorter than that. I started working with the Lutheran Service Builder team about 2 years ago now. But I've been leading our Concordia Technology Solutions team for almost 6 years. So I'm very familiar with software and with our support team and everything that we do here. So it was a pleasure to jump on with Lutheran Service Builder a couple of years ago when we shifted things around and moved that as part of the CTS group. So it's been a joy to learn how to use it. It's been a joy to teach others how to use it and to just hear the feedback of how helpful it is for life in the church office. You know, it saves plenty of time as you're building your service folders, building your presentations for worship, and I hope I can show you that today so that you can start saving more time than you are right now. So my contact information is on the screen. Feel free to contact me at any time. My email is the best way to reach me. My phone number goes right here. I've got it on mute right now, so don't try calling me during the middle of the webinar. It won't distract me because I'll have it go to voicemail. All right, let's move forward. So a few housekeeping items before we start. First off, I'm planning 50 minutes for presentation today. I may go a little bit over that. I'm kind of notorious for running long, at least on the presentation side. I save about 10 minutes at the end for question and answers. And usually in our Builder webinars, we'll have quite a few questions. So I ask that if you have any questions, ask them throughout, because that'll give me an idea of what I have in the queue. I've got that pulled up on the screen here so that I can know how much time I should leave for questions. Now, if you don't think about it till the last minute, that's okay. We will be recording this webinar, so if you are joining on the recording, thank you for watching after the fact. I'm sorry you couldn't be here live, but the only downside to watching after the fact is you just don't get to ask the questions. And I've already put my contact information up. I'll share it one more time before we're done. You can always reach out to me or the team with questions. So it is a nice thing to have the recording if you want to review this after the fact or share it with somebody else in your church too. So we'll be sending that out later on today. All right, so if you're not familiar with Lutheran Service Builder, I'm going to be asking you that in just a second. Lutheran Service Builder is PC-based software that allows churches to quickly and easily plan services, create custom service folders, export presentations, and conform with copyright requirements. Now, we're not going to go into great detail on all of that today, but I wanted to give you this broad overview so that you understand the breadth of things that you can do with Lutheran Service Builder. Now, that first part there, it's PC-based software. That is what it is right now, but we are working on a new web version, and that'll be coming out in a few months. It's already in field testing. We've got about 100 churches using it right now, and we're getting great feedback. So stay tuned. That's coming. If we have time at the end, I'm going to give you a quick preview just so you get a quick taste of what the interface will look like. Things are a little bit different, but the end results are the same, and the way you go about it in our mind is even better than what we have, what I'll be presenting today. But the core concepts, everything will flow over into the new version. So that's exciting. We've been working on it for a while. I'm very eager to roll it out to everybody. All right, so I make a few assumptions every time I lead a webinar. First off, I am assuming that you are new to Lutheran Service Builder. Now, I don't necessarily mean that you have just purchased it. You may be a new user to it. Your church may have been using it for a while and you're new to it. But we're not going to go at the very end of the advanced spectrum, and we're going to cover some simple stuff in the beginning. So if you've been using it for a while, the first part of the presentation you may know very well. The second half will be where you'll get the real value. But if you're brand new to that, you're going to enjoy the whole thing. All right, I'm assuming you've had informal training at best, and I think that's a pretty safe assumption because I know that the training opportunities we've had in the about first 10 to 11 years that Lutheran Service Builder was around were rather limited, especially in the latter part of that. So we've started up with more trainings over the last year and a half and have gotten a great response. So you may have attended one of those, in which case then that's not a good assumption about you. But for everybody else, I'm assuming you've had informal training at best. I am assuming everybody's eager to get more out of the software. I think that's just a given, that if you are attending a webinar to learn more about Builder, you're eager to get more out of that. And that's what I hope to show you today. Finally, I'm assuming you're very busy. I've yet to meet somebody in the church who is not very busy. And so I want this to provide value for you. If it's not providing the value, or and I do ask you, you may want to wait till the second half at least, because that's where the real meat of the new stuff is going to come in. But if it's not providing value, please go in and do something else. You can watch the recording later on. I really want this to be helpful to you. That's what we're here for. The work of the church of sharing the gospel is far more important than any software. Software is just a tool to help you do that. So I always keep that in mind as I present. So let me ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself. And I've got several polls that I'll put out for about a minute each, maybe less than that, maybe 30 seconds. So the first one, to help me understand my audience a bit more, is to let me know what your role in the church is. Please select the option that most closely describes your primary role at church. And I know we typically in Builder webinars, these are the ones that we get the most. That's why we limited that. And yeah, the trends are really holding true. We typically have administrator as the #1, and then ordained and musician are kind of 2 and 3, although we've got several others there, which is exciting today. So I'm curious of the others. If you want to put your position at the church in the chat, I'd love to hear that. So good. All right, we've got everybody in. Thank you for that. The next one is to ask, are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder at your congregation? And that'll help me know just how advanced or not advanced our users are. So we'll let those votes go through and see. Looks like we've got a majority who are using it, although not 100%. So yeah, actually it's about 60-40. That's good. Very good. The next one is, for those of you who are using it at your church, what would you consider your skill level to be? Expert, advanced, intermediate, novice, or a complete newbie? And this will help me know if my assumption about not knowing too much about it is true. All right, looks like we've got a kind of a middle of the road. Intermediate is the most common one. So we've got at least 1 or 2 advanced, so thank you very much for being here. I hope to add even more to your advanced knowledge of Lutheran Service Builder, especially as we get near the end. All right, the last one is just for me, or I should say not for me, but for us here at CPH. What lectionary do you use? Do you use the 3-year, the 1-year, maybe another lectionary, or none whatsoever, and you just do more sermon series, or you might not be sure? The reason I ask this is we're trying to identify especially the 1-year lectionary congregations, because more and more we're hearing that feedback, but with our lists that we know of 1-year congregations, that's not too many. So looks like we're about 80-20, which is pretty typical, but see, that 20% is higher than we had been seeing. It was more like 10%. So I think the use of the 1-year lectionary is on the rise, and that's something we're keeping an eye out as we pick products to share with our churches. All right, so the outline for today, let me jump back over here. All right, the outline. First off, we're going to plan an upcoming service, and we're going to look at April 29th, the 5th Sunday of Easter. And I'm doing April 29th because I've got this same presentation 3 times in a row over the next 2 weeks. And so that way I'm always looking ahead. So if you were hoping to get something for the next 2 weeks, I'm sorry, but you can use these principles as well. After that, we are going to prepare the service for 3 print formats, and I'll go into detail on that. So it's planning once, export in multiple ways, and then I'll show you how to prepare the service for presentation. We'll touch briefly on how to export it for audio. That's a separate feature, and I can't really demonstrate that, and I'll explain why as we get closer to it, but I can give you a preview of that. Finally, if we have time, and I'm hoping we do, I'm going to show you a sneak peek of the new Lutheran Service Builder. That'll just be very brief, so don't think you're going to get a full demo of that, but I want to kind of whet your appetite for that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Oops. Backed up. There we go. I'm going to switch over to Lutheran Service Builder. All right, so for those of you who are familiar with Builder, this will seem very simple to you. This is the home screen of Lutheran Service Builder. And the first thing I want to show before we get anywhere else is for you who are 1-year lectionary users. If you haven't set your lectionary to 1 year, you can do so under Edit Preferences, or you can just hit F4 and it'll take you here to the Preferences section. You'll click Locations, and then most likely you'll have one location, maybe you'll have more, but the lectionary is right below that, so you can switch it to 3 year, or from 3 year to 1 year. It defaults to 3 year. So just a little tip that'll make your life a lot easier as you're selecting the readings. Most likely you've already done that, but just in case, that's how easy it is. But we're going to stick with 3 years since that's the majority of our audience. And the first thing we're going to do is go to the calendar. Now the calendar is just a typical calendar, except that as you go through it, you can see the specific days in the church year. And so there is the day honoring St. Mark. There's the 4th Sunday of Easter, of Easter. I got to get my prepositions correct. The 5th Sunday of Easter is where we're going today. So that's April 29th, and I'm going to click on that. And it defaults to that specific day in the church year. Now I could select another occasion, so St. Mark the Evangelist or St. Philip and St. James Apostles are within what we call the octave of the church year. So that's 8 days before or after. It's not really 8 days, it's Sunday to Sunday. So it's inclusive. So it's the octave before and the octave after that specific day. So I hope that helps explain why we've got a few others. In most cases, you will probably not be observing all of these different days, but it depends on your church. So we build that in there, and then the propers for those days flow in nicely. So we're going to select the 5th Sunday of Easter. You've got service times there that you can set up, and that's just to help you kind of plan if you do things differently for the early service versus the late service, or maybe Saturday night is different. You can do that. So we'll go ahead and plan the service, and that's the first thing we'll do. And you'll see the next step is to select the order of service. Now, all of this is directly out of Lutheran Service Book. The Divine Service settings, there's 5 options here. Setting 1 and 2 are probably our most common ones. That's why we ordered it in that way. We're going to stick with 1 today, but there's some other good ones in there. We just don't have time to get into that. So you can see the daily offices or other types of service. The service of prayer and preaching is very common when you're not celebrating the Lord's Supper. So be sure to take a look at those if you haven't already. All right, we're going to select Divine Service Setting 1 because this is the part that I really want to get into as we go through here and show you some of the tools on how to plan once. So this is our planning view. You can see the order of service is laid out on the left-hand side. The right-hand side, you have some different tools that allow you to pick the elements that you put in there, and we'll look at that shortly. And on the far right, you'll have this information panel where you'll see a lot more about each element. So let's dig into that quickly. First thing in there, Hymn of Invocation. Now that is the official name. Some people may call that, or some congregations may refer to that as the opening hymn. And you can do that here. Just double click on it and type opening hymn if you wanted to change that name. I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying that's a way to do that. So Hymn of Invocation is the Hymn of Invocation. All right. Back there. Now you have a list of suggested hymns, and this is based on the church year. So you're on the 5th Sunday of Easter. So the hymn of the day is a proper. It's assigned for that day, and that goes later on in the service. So we're not going to use that here. You have hymns for the readings below that, and then other suggested hymns that come from one of our other products, the Hymn Selection Guide. So you can look at those. I already have planned out the hymn, so bear with me as I look back and forth. The first one that we're going to do is Alleluia, Jesus is Risen. And so I believe that is right here. There we go. Alleluia, Jesus is Risen, hymn number 474 in the Lutheran Service Book. So when I select that, you can see that on the right-hand side, all of the text shows. There's that big copyright sign right behind it. That's to let you know that it's not public domain. You do have to pay for use of that, and that is done through our hymn license if you are a subscriber almost all of our builder customers are subscribers to the hymn license. You could use other licenses for certain hymns depending on if they're included in that. There's a way to set that up. We're not going to talk about that in any detail today, but I just want to give you the heads up on that. So you can see here, there's the text. You can select the melody, and it'll show you all the music for that. The info tab shows you a lot of different information about it. This is why it might come up for the readings, because every stanza has reading or has verse references. But above that, you have things like the text, who wrote the text, who composed the melody, where the copyright information is, the tune, topics, so Church Triumphant and Easter. And you'll have this search button near most of these things. So if you wanted to search for all Easter hymns, you click search. And then over in the middle column here, you can see all of the Easter hymns. So pretty cool stuff there. You can do the same thing by verse, search by that verse. You can click view and show you exactly what that verse is, just in case you don't have all of Scripture memorized, which I would guess is most of us here. So the other thing, and I don't know if this will play, let me see if I can. Yeah, it's not going to go through there. So that's probably not going to work out well. Hopefully you can hear this. I don't think you will, but you can preview that. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's making any noise, so I apologize for that. That's just the way this webinar software works. It doesn't take the desktop noise. So, but that'll give you a quick little preview. It's a little MIDI, so it's just the tune, so you have an idea of that. All right, so we'll go back to suggestions. Now I can either double click on that, and it should, sometimes the double click doesn't work for me. You can always drag and drop it over there, and that'll work. So I know there's certain combination of steps that when you try to double click, it doesn't work. We're going to fix that in the new version. But yeah, so you can do the suggestions. You can also search, and we'll do that as we get to the next one. So I'm going to keep moving forward. All right, so now you have rubrics for stand, and the sign of the baptism may be, or the sign of the cross may be made by all in remembrance of their baptism. That is great information to have, but sometimes you don't need that in the bulletin or the service folder. So we're going to go ahead and right-click and delete that. Invocation has a default. That's a pretty standard right there. The exhortation, it has the default for that setting of the divine service, but you could select one from the others. We're going to stick with that. Kneel or stand, we're going to remove the next one, and I'll show you why as we get closer to that. Then we have the confession of sins, which again, you can look at the other settings or some of the other services that are in there. Absolution, declaration of grace, depending on whether you have an ordained minister present or like at my congregation, our vicar will serve, and on the weeks where we don't have communion, he's leading the service by himself. And so instead of the absolution, which is for the office of the pastor, we'll put the declaration of grace. But we'll stick with absolution today and collapse that just to show, yep, we've addressed it. Now we move into the service of the word. There's the introit, which is a proper, and you see here introit for the 5th Sunday of Easter. We'll go down to the Kyrie, that is included. Hymn of praise, we could do the Gloria in Excelsis, or this is the feast. Let's go with this is the feast today. Salutation and collect of the day is another proper. That's automatically selected because of what we've chosen for this week. Now we get into the readings. That is also chosen from the lectionary. Psalm or gradual. We'll stick with the gradual today. That's also proper. Then the epistle, Alleluia, and verse. Now you can see here that you have the verse for Lent. Sometimes this falls outside of Lent, like we are already outside of Lent, and so it's showing up because of the time frame. You may want to include that time frame in the calendar because sometimes Lent is still being observed at this point. Actually, April 29th, maybe not. But regardless, you have the verse of the day for the 5th Sunday of Easter, and that's what we're going to go for today. All right, so we'll select that. Holy Gospel is next, and then you've got the hymn of the day. And that's where we'll go, and we'll select that. See, double-clicking works now. Now, as we go into this farther, you could make adjustments. You see, this is 8 verses. You may not want to sing 8 verses. As we get in farther, you can choose and see which ones you want. So if you only want to do 6, or you can go up here into stanzas and say, right now, regardless of the bulletin format, I'm going to say we're not going to do 4 and 5. cut that out, and it removes those. Now, I just picked a couple at random. You may want to actually look at which ones if you are going to cut them, because some hymns should not have any stanzas cut, but that's okay. All right, next we're going to do the sermon. Now, I know that it's quite common for many sermons to have the title in there. If you wanted to do the title as part of this caption, sometimes it goes in the sub-caption. We'll talk about that later on. You could do that here. And I really thought that there we go. I'm going to copy paste that and put this theme from Creative Worship as the title for the sermon. So abide in me and abide in love. All right, next we're going to do the creed. We'll put that in there. Prayers of the church. Now this one, in my opinion, could be one of the most time-consuming things as you prepare for the service. But our church body, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, has done a fantastic job of providing prayers of the church, and then our team here formats them for Lutheran Service Builder. So I'm going to switch over to my web browser real quick and show you where you can go to get those. All right, let me make sure, yep, that's updated. So lutheranservicebuilder.com. It'll forward you to music.cph.org/lutheran-service-builder. That's why we say lutheranservicebuilder.com, because it's a lot quicker. There's a number of things on here that would be helpful to you, but I want you to scroll down to the bottom and go to Downloads. And Downloads will then allow you to download the prayers of the church for the upcoming days. These are what we call the Let Us Pray files, and that is coming from the LCMS Worship Office. So all you have to do, and depending on what they are, sometimes the 1 year and the 3 year are the exact same, but we still just put them in there separately so you know what to click. And we'll click 3 year, and it will download, and then we'll click on this. It downloads as a zip file so that it doesn't get blocked by your spam filters. And you just have to double click that. Now, what you probably can't see is that this would flash. See, there it is flashing. Hopefully you can see that. And I already have that, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it. I did this in testing, so I know it works. We'll go ahead and clear that out. Let me go back here and prayers of the church, suggestions, under Write My Own. I'm not sure why suggestions are not showing up right now. That's okay. You go to Write My Own. That's where you can get it. And it's April 29th, 2018, Series B. And you can see them all right there, formatted in a builder-appropriate format. So you can just drag and drop those over to Prayers of the Church. There we go. Prayer of the Church. Let me go back here for a quick second, though. If you haven't already subscribed to this, when you go to the page, you'll get a form in here that you can fill out and put your email in, and whenever we have new ones, we'll notify you that they're now available. You can download them all at once, or you can just go back here every time. So that is how you can quickly and easily do prayers of the church. So hopefully that was helpful to you. If you hadn't seen that before, go ahead and put a note in the chat. Let me know that that's new for you. I'm always curious to see how many people are doing it, because I know how many subscribers we have, and it's only a small percentage of our builder customers. All right, next we have another rubric. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Then we've got sit, offering, stand, and then we have the offertory. Now under suggestions, you can go in here and see what the default offertory is, or you could do something like the hymn, Let the Vineyards Be Fruitful. That's only one verse, and yeah, you can see that that's only one stanza. You can drag and drop that and sing that during that time. So that is the last thing before the service of the sacrament. Now, as we scroll down here, you can see there's the proper preface, and that is set for the 5th Sunday of Easter, the Sanctus, prayer of thanksgiving. Now, I want to highlight this here, the words of our Lord. We have left column and right column, which seems like a very weird thing when you have a vertical list. Well, in the service book, there are two different options, and they are parallel on the page. One's on the left, one's on the right. And so that's why we call it that, because there's no name for each one of those. It's just the order. So the left column goes words of our Lord, proclamation of Christ, and then Lord's Prayer, whereas the right column is the Lord's Prayer first, then words of our Lord without the proclamation. So we're going to stick with the left column. Then you got the Pax Domini, the Agnus Dei, I always mispronounce that one. All right, and then we get into the distribution. And there's some rubrics in here as well. And you don't necessarily need all of these because I think for most people, as they're going up For those who are regular attendees, they know exactly how this works. And the distribution has the words that the communion assistant will say. And so you don't need those printed necessarily. But if you want to include them, you can. They're just, we took everything straight out of service books. I'm going to delete these. And I'm going to delete distribution and delete that. And so distribution as a caption will still come out here, but then dismissal will be the only other thing that's printed. But during that, we have distribution hymns. So let me show you another couple ways you can search for it. So the next one we're going to do, Soul, Adorn Yourself with Gladness. I know that's 636 because I have it on my sheet of paper. And I'm just going to click Enter, and it'll go directly to that. So I don't have to type in anything else. Double click, it's ready to go. Go to the next distribution hymn, and maybe I'm wanting to look up something for Lord's Supper. And you can see here that I get this whole list of hymns that come up. Oh, and sometimes this little tooltip will stay up. Ignore that. It's kind of a Windows error. So if you go into Info, Lord's Supper is one of the topics that you can search by. So you could also do topic Lord's Supper, and it'll get you the same thing. So if you have a really long list, maybe you don't want to put in, if it's a very generic phrase like Christ, you may not want to put in Christ. You may want to look for that as a topic, although I don't think Christ is a topic because Christ is in all our hymns. But that's one way to do that. So the one I'm going to do is You Satisfy the Hungry Heart. I'll type that in. There we go. And if you hover over it, you can see exactly why it's coming up in the search. So Jesus in Your Dying Woes, why is that? Well, you got You and Satisfy in there. So, all right, we'll go ahead and double click that. Oops. Like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, now we've got Stand, Post-Communion Canticle. We're going to do Thank the Lord, Sing His Praise, Post-Communion Collect. That doesn't change with every Sunday, but there are specific collects for different times in the church year. So we're going to go with that one. And then you have the benediction, and it seems like something's missing. There is not a closing hymn in Lutheran service book, and so it doesn't come across. Now, that's something we hear from our customers all the time. Well, we always have a closing hymn. I don't think I've ever been to a church without a closing hymn, so that's I understand that. And in the new version, we're going to put a placeholder for that makes it clear that it's not in service book, but it's something that's common. But if you want to add one, all you have to do is click the Insert button up in the top center, and it will say Insert Element. I'll select Hymn, and I'll drag it, to the very bottom. And now I can select my hymn, which is 544, Oh Love, How Deep. And I don't want it to just say hymn, I want it to say Closing Hymn. Rename to Closing Hymn. Right click, rename Closing Hymn. And now my service is done. Now, I know we're at about 1:30 now, so that took me about 15 minutes or so, but I was describing every step. When you get familiar with this, you can fly through this if you're sticking to the lectionary. And, as you're doing things like removing rubrics, you can always go and save this. I'll say Save As, Divine Service Setting 1, Training Example, and click OK. Now, this structure that I did here will work in the future. So if I go back to my calendar, and let's say I'm going to May and Easter 6, and I'm going to plan for the 6th Sunday of Easter, and I'm going to go down here to Divine Service Setting 1, Training Example, and click OK. Now, as I go through here, my hymns are not the exact same, but my structure is. And now my sermon does have that title, so that's something you may want to keep in mind. You see my closing hymn is in there. I'm sorry for these little tooltips that are sticking in there. Again, a fun little Windows bug that we deal with. But you can still go and put everything else in. So the things that were added as elements kept that placeholder, but the specific details were not. So as you set up your custom order of service, which this isn't really custom, it's the Divine Service setting 1, we just added a closing hymn, changed a few names, removed a few rubrics. That saves you a ton of time to use that. So I encourage you to do that same thing for your congregation, even if you switch between a couple different settings. I know that's very common to alternate between a few settings, maybe doing a different one every week and doing 4 or 5. I've heard of that the fifth, setting 5 is only used on the Sunday or in the months with 5 Sundays. You could do something like that, but it makes it really easy. So, oops, that's to edit the service. Let me go back to the calendar, go back to April, go back to the 5th Sunday, go ahead and edit the bulletin. All right, the next thing I want to show you before we go too far is this idea of custom elements. So under elements, I have here As We Gather. As We Gather is an introduction to the service. And so I could pull that all the way up to the top, and it has As We Gather from Another Time. Now, this is something that we pre-write in our product called Creative Worship, and it's always very well written and just adds a nice way to kind of reflect before the service. I know many congregations use it. So we've got this placeholder that's a custom element, and all I have to do is click Edit, paste in there, and I'm good to go. So that saves automatically. When I go to Hymn of Invocation, go back to As We Gather, that's there. Now you can create those by going to My Worship Resources, this 4th icon in the 2nd box, and you can see As We Gather is right there. So you could always change it in here, but you can also change it during the planning of the service. So just a few examples, but now we're going to go into Bulletin View. And I did that too quickly, I apologize. So this is the planning view. Right to the right of that icon there, that's the 3rd box, is Prepare a Bulletin for your service. And this is where we really get to start modifying it. All right, so there are in Lutheran Service Builder 2.0, which is this version here, Lutheran Service Builder 2. I don't think it's 2.0, I think it's like 2.3 something. But you can have themes and formats. Now, themes and formats serve 2 very different purposes that let you get to the same end result of something that you can print out. In the online version of Lutheran Service Builder, we are combining those. If I have time, I'll show you that at the very end. So the themes are style sheets, whereas the formats are picking how each element is displayed. So the 3 examples that I'm going to do today, which I probably should have put them in a slide, that would have worked out better. I may do that for my next 2 sessions of this. We're going to do a typical printed bulletin, where if you want to print this out and hand it to everybody, they will never have to touch anything else, just that printed bulletin, meaning they won't need screens, they won't need hymnals, everything is right there. That's what we're going to do first. Then we're going to do that again, but for a large print version. Then we're going to do a hymnal user bulletin, which is less of a bulletin, or I'm sorry, I should say service folder. Bulletin conveys ads and announcements and other things. Maybe not ads, that's a marketing term. Announcements and news. So a service folder meant just for hymnal users, where it gives them the references, and I'll talk about the propers. Maybe you spell those out, maybe you don't. But it's a very different format for the same service. And I got this idea because one of our customers shared feedback with us that that's what they do, is they have all of these different types, all for the same service, but it really helps out. And I've heard of others doing the regular and large print. That's pretty common. Sometimes you just blow it up with the printer, but this is actually different formats. But the hymnal user one I thought was pretty cool. So let's go through this and show you what that means. So the first thing we're going to do is pick the formats. So you can see here all of the elements that we created are in this service, all spelled out. I'm going to go here to Formats and Edit Service Formats and click New, and I'm going to call this Printed Bulletin Standard. All right, so you've got different types here of different elements, and this is how you can format them. This here's the preview in that box on the left. This tells you how they go in. So again, this is our standard pick up the bulletin. You don't have to do anything else. So we're going to say, all right, show the hymns. We're going to show the melodies. we're going to show all captions. The caption format would be either we could just do opening hymn. They don't need to know the verse or the number and title, although I find that helpful. So I'm going to switch that to just be that. And then you could do a default sub caption. If you hover over it, it'll show you what different captions there are. We don't need to change the default. We'll just let it go because they're singing from their hymnal or from their service folder. And then it says show stanza numbering, show chant pointing. If you wanted to, you could turn those off. I think the stanza numbering always shows for the melody, so that would just be for the text. Readings, we could say default content is the text. I would actually say the melody in case we want to sing that, just to show that difference. Caption display, we'll show all captions, and then caption format. I'm going to go to this third one that says what type of reading and the reference. Or we could do a type of reading, and the default subcaption would be hashtag REF hashtag. So it shows the reference over on the right. That's kind of a nice way of doing it. Reading format, we could show the headings that are out of the ESV scripture or not. We could show the verse numbers. I'm going to go ahead and do that and then show the words of Christ in red. The stanza numbers, chant pointing, that would be if there's anything in here. Propers, we could do, there's a lot of the same things. We're going to do melodies if needed. We're going to show all captions, and we're just going to keep it as collect of the day. And again, if there are other things, stanza numbers, chant pointing, we'll just keep those on. Finally, the liturgy. We're going to show everything with the melody. We like to sing at this congregation, so we're going to show all of that, show all captions, and then we're going to keep it as the just the element name, and I think that's it. So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and it's going to update. And you'll see my little mouse spinning. Maybe you can't see that spinning. It's spinning. It's thinking as it converts everything to that new format. So now as we go through here, you can see all of this is put in with all the line, everything else. So words of Christ are in red. You get the whole thing because this is going into that format. Now, if you click on layout, you can choose what kind of paper size you want it. And so if you are printing this on, 8.5 by 14, I believe that is. It's, yeah, here we go, 8.5 by 14 legal folded. That's going to be a little bit different than if you did a letter folded, which would be 8.5 by 11 folded. So depending on which one you have, I'll just do this to show you the difference. You can also put margins in there, and we'll click OK. And everything kind of gets smaller from there. So let's say that is our standard one. The last thing I want to do is say, all right, we're printing this out. It doesn't fit our standard fonts and everything, and that's okay. We're going to change that. So we'll go up to Style Sheets, click Edit Styles. That's also Themes, and say our new one is Printed Bulletin Standard. Now, as you click on these different elements, you can make those changes. You can also do this drop down to see. And elements is not the right word. Oh, I apologize. I'm not sure what, maybe elements is just different things that you can style. I probably should talk to our programmers and find out what the official name is, because it's components of the element is really what it is. So I personally like Roboto as my text. I downloaded that free from Google. Google Fonts is awesome. Roboto is what Android devices use, and I'm a big Android fan, so I'm going to put that in there and just click through and make that a little bit different. I'm going to copy Roboto so I can save all that. We'll go ahead and select that here. The subcaptions, we'll put that in, and I can make the subcaptions maybe a gray color. They don't need to be the full dark black. And then in the body has that, and finally the copyright line. All of those, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so it's not completely small. And then I can go to any one of these and change the position. This one is indented to the left by ½ an inch, and I want to do a little bit before the paragraph to create some spacing. I could do after the paragraph as well. I don't think I'll do that. All right, we'll click OK, and it will update everything. So you will see it change in just a second. because I already have the service and everything out there. It does take a second to update it, but there we go. Now from here, I can go save as, and I'll save it to my desktop, and I'll put in here printed bulletin standard. And now that will export out for me, and probably I have to go to my desktop to show that. Okay, we'll open this up. It'll open in Word. We'll give it a quick second. It's opened up in the background. Here we go, over on this side. All right, there we have it. Now, there's more that we could do. We could add images. I don't think I have enough time to show all of that. There's going to be a little work that needs to be done in here based on page breaks and everything. So you have that freedom to go and do that afterwards. So maybe you remove a few things that are not necessary. Maybe as you are doing different pages, it automatically shifts. Sometimes I've seen that where As We Gather is on the left-hand side, we'll have a cover, and then you'd have the hymn after that. So you've got all of this different information that has been exported out, and you can format it from here to really fit what you need. But it's ready to go for your bullet or your service folder to print and put in your bulletin. Now, of course, you could do the different print options where you make it a booklet right here, sheets per booklet. So you've got that option, yeah, multiple pages, book fold. You could do all of that. That's just how it prints out, but you have that flexibility. All right, the next thing we're going to do is create that large print bulletin. Now, I encourage you to think of the format first and then go and modify the style sheet. So we'll go to Edit Service Formats. We'll click New, and we'll say Printed Bulletin, Large Print. And we'll go through this pretty quickly because for the most part, we're just going to do text here. And we'll still do the default captions, and we'll still put in the different things that we did before so that you can see it, but we're not doing any of the melodies. And the reason for that is that you can blow up the font on the music without the melody, which for large print is better. When it's already engraved like it is here with the melody, you don't want to do that because that won't change the size if you can't stretch it any farther. And for a large print, it's all about the size. So we'll go ahead and just do exactly what we did before. A lot of the defaults will work, and we'll click OK. So that's going to change things here. And you can start to see there is my text. Now, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to Edit Style Sheets and Create New and say Printed Bulletin Large Print and save that. And then I'm going to go through and change everything to Times New Roman. Oops. And when you hit Enter, it's saved. So be careful with that. I was doing that all the time before. All right, so we'll go in here and I'm going to click on each element, and if it's not already Times New Roman, I'm going to make it Times New Roman because I think that's very helpful for large print. It's an easier read. It's a lot, not quite as modern, but it's easier for weak eyes, and a lot of the weaker eyes are those of older members, and so they're familiar with this font. It's easier to pick up quickly. All right, now we're going to go through here and say, all right, we're going to do 24 for the big ones. And I'm going to do everything a minimum of 14 inches, or 14 font size. And that's what I found when I was working at, in the pastoral care division at a nursing home, is that 14 is, by definition, the best size for large print. If you want to go larger, you can, but at a minimum, it should be size 14 font. Now, depending on how much paper you want to use, that's another matter. All right, I'm going to go ahead and position these all the way over, and we should be in good shape. I'm going to add a little bit of before spacing to this and a little bit of after, and maybe a little bit in between the lines just to create more space. There we go. I think that's good. All right, I'm going to click OK. I'm not going to change any of the colors or anything. I don't want red color because that could be harder to read. And there is my large print format. So it's a combination. I would switch these two to the format of large print and the theme of large print. I'll go and save that as large print. All right. And I will go down to my desktop, open up large print. Let's see where this one opens. Or not open. Let me try that again. There we go. And you can see that there, and I just realized I forgot one step that I think is really good. I'm going to back it up here, and I'm going to say go to layout, and for this, I'm going to go to the legal folded, which gives me a little bit more space, because for a large print, you want to see that. So now I'll go ahead and save that. Sorry about that, I skipped that step. We'll go ahead and save that over it, and then I'll go to my desktop, and wait for it. There we go. All right. So you can see how that's very simple. Not that many words on each page, but it's larger print, and you don't have all of the melodies in there. So it makes it easier to do. Now you may want to format that different. You've got that option. You can style it differently. Some of these might still be too small to read. And maybe I put too much spacing on there in between paragraphs. There's a lot of white space there. So that's just one example of how to do it. All right, now for the completely different side of things. So the next thing that we're going to do is for hymnal users. And I only have one question in there that's pretty easy. So I'm going to keep going past my 50 minutes unless you have more questions, just because I'm going a little slow on this. All right, we're going to go back into formats, edit service formats. I'm going to go to new, and I'm going to call this printed insert hymnal users. All right, and within that, I'm going to really scale back and say, all right, I'm just doing title and page number. And we're going to do the default caption display. And for the reference, I'm going to do, I always forget that page, PG. That should be really easy to remember. So I'll put that in there. I may do opening hymn, provide a little bit more details. Readings, title and page number only. We're going to do actually reference there. All right, very good. Propers, title and page only. We're going to do page there. Do the least amount of things, title and page number only. And we'll say what the reference is. We'll click OK. And watch this. It's going to disappear. Everything is going to go away. Now, there's all that spacing because I still have this set up for the printed bulletin large print. Now, I could move this down to printed bulletin standard, and it'll be a lot less on there if I want that. So I could do that. I think what I may even do is go back into go back into style sheets, add a new one, and call this one. What do we say that was before? Bulletin insert, printed insert. That's what I did. Printed insert hymnal users. All right, and I'll go in here, and maybe what I'll do for that is keep the rubato, and then go through and change rubato. But I'm going to change this font down to 18, and I'm going to change this 10 is good. Rubato 11 is good for that. We'll drop down to 10 for that. We're going to make this far more compact than we did before. And I'm still keeping all of that. The last thing I'll do is I'll put this back to 0, and then we should be okay. Yeah, I'm not going to tighten that anymore. We'll click all right. And so that tightens it quite a bit more. So there's a few things in here that will need some cleaning up. So like the rubrics, and that's one of the reasons why I deleted a lot of those rubrics. The rubrics are not optional. You can't take that out. I think we're fixing that in the online version though. And things like as we gather, you may not want to have those in. But if we go in here and hit save as, and we'll save this as hymnal users, give that a second to generate, go down here, hymnal users. It'll be opening up. There we go. you can start going through here and say, okay, I know some of these things we don't need. We won't put all of that, and maybe you want the rubrics in, but if you're trying to get this down to a single page, that's weird how that has that. You could put all of these in here, and it's just a quick outline of the service. Maybe that would have been a better phrase for that. But you can see here, it just shows the page numbers where needed, and you can follow individual direction, and you'd still need to keep those acknowledgments on there. Actually, you probably don't even need to keep them on there because we're just referencing it. We're not showing everything. Yeah, it might be good to keep those on there. I think it does clear out anything that's not displayed. So indicating where these are coming from. So yeah, go ahead, keep that on there. And so you can look here and see, and some of these are just references that you don't need to keep. Some of them you might, but that's a pretty quick way. And you never had to go back to planning the service. All right, we've got about 9 minutes left. I've only got that one question there. So the last thing I'm going to show you before I do a quick preview is the presentation mode. So if you click presentation, you're going to have everything from the plan put in here, and then you have that same thing for presentations. So you could go with the format, and there'll be some things where it's title only, text only. As you go, you can see that you have those same options there because it's just all from service formats, and that's why we split it out in here. But it'll be different in the new version. I'll explain that as we get there. So we'll just do, no, I don't want to do standard. Let's do it as if it was large print because I want the hymns to still show up. And then for the theme, you can do a number of different ones. You can see some I've done before. I'm going to say edit slide templates. We're going to do a new one, and we're going to call this Season of Easter. And you can go in here and do I still have, yeah, I still have Roboto in there. Change that to Roboto. And it doesn't update automatically for the preview because this is just telling you what you're looking at. But the background then, I can go in here and select this. This is from our digital paraments. This is from Creative Worship. And then I've got all of that in there. I can start doing, we'll just keep that left. And I'll click OK. And the one thing I always try to do, yeah, you'll see now an update. And I go into layout, although it's not too bad. We've got margins at 50. I think I already updated that. But you can see now there are all the different screens or slides that you can have. And you can save this. Now, when you go to save that, it saves as a PowerPoint. You could also do Media Shout 3, although I know Media Shout's up to 6. Our new version, when we release it, will have Media Shout 6 capabilities. But that creates everything. And we'll go and open that real quick. Let's see where that shows up. Yeah, here we go. And now you can modify this from here and change whatever you want if you want to delete some things or put something else in there. But it's that easy. So again, plan once, export in multiple formats. It's really easy to do. So let me get back to my my slides and say, if you are new to Builder, you can go ahead and download a free trial at lutheranservicebuilder.com. That'll take you to our website. One free tool that will lead us into the preview of the online version is lutherancalendar.org. So you remember the calendar that we had at the beginning of the presentation. It's almost identical, except it's web-based, and it's also very mobile-friendly. And you can click on any one of these dates, and it'll take you and show you the propers for the day, which is pretty awesome. So you have all of that in there, and again, it's very mobile-friendly. And then what you have is this plan the service. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign in. I think I have a sign in. I should have figured that out beforehand. Yeah, there we go. So now what I can do is start planning the service. And so I can say, all right, so for April, 5th Sunday of April, here's my readings. I'm going to add my hymns in here. And so I'll do hymn 474. I'll add another one. This one's going to be 633. And order of service is going to be divine service setting 1. We're going to have a baptism that day if we wanted to do that. All of this is available for you to go in for free and create this account. And maybe you can say, Pastor Smith is preaching as a note. And now you've got the beginnings of a service plan. So that's Lutheran Calendar. That's for free. This is actually a stepping stone to the new Lutheran Service Builder, the online version. Now, the one question I've got waiting in the queue there is from Diane, who said, will the new online format for LSB be Apple friendly? Absolutely, because it's online and you can access it on any device, whether it's a Mac, whether it's an iPad, you can even access it on your iPhone or your Android device. It'll all be web-based. You can access it wherever and whenever you need it. So even if you're doing things from home, you don't have to go into the church office and run the PC that has the current Lutheran Service Builder. So let me give you a quick preview of that. See, it looks very similar to Lutheran Calendar. And we'll go, we're in April 2018. We'll click on the 5th Sunday of Easter where we were before. This is where you can plan that service. So I can go in here and add a hymn, and let's say 955, enter that in. Now what you do get with the version of Builder is you get this little preview over here. So now you can go in and see all of that information that we were looking at before. There's the melody, you can see that, the info, who wrote that. You have the same kind of thing where it's tune name or suggest on Easter 5, and you see all these other ones. The search here is just absolutely fantastic. Gives you these helpful things. So if you wanted to say topic, you just start typing in and hit tab, and then you can say the Lord's Supper. And oops, I forgot to put in the quotation marks. That'll tell me that it's a single phrase, and it'll show me all of that. So all sorts of different things. Yeah, you can see related topics, and I'll show you those subcategories as well. Really cool stuff. Now, after you plan that service, we'll go ahead and put in Divine Service Setting 1. We can go up here, switch to Bulletin View. And the Bulletin View will allow you to edit it right in line. So we've kind of taken that plan this view and split it up and say, okay, at a higher level, plan your services, and then do your editing of the bulletin as you're going through and adjusting things. So you can add elements in here. So there's the hymn of invocation. You could just quickly add a sub caption. There's your rubrics if you wanted to change how those look. If you wanted to insert like a hymn, you'll say, all right, put the hymn right here and tell me what to do, or tell it which one. From here, you can select your different stanzas, or you could say show the melody. Now, you'll notice here, like maybe you don't want, whoops, maybe you don't want your rubrics to be centered. This is what I really wanted to show you, where the things we talked about today is going to change a little bit. We now call them bulletin formats. And this is a combination of the style sheet and the formats. So the default shows you the entire example here. And then you can go through and select like, okay, body or heading, and say, what do I want on here? Now the fonts will be based off of a number of different things that are web fonts, web ready fonts. We're going to have some more in there from Google Fonts. It'll depend on what has been uploaded and what's currently available on your computer. But then you can do all of the different formatting. You can see it all right there. Text before, if you wanted to say before, or maybe you wanted to do the plus sign and then text after. I've seen that before. All sorts of cool stuff like that. The layout, you can pick your paper size and do that all from here. I should have shown you before the font size. So you have that all right here. And then you can just copy this format or do a new format based off of something and save all of that all in one thing. So what I showed before in Builder 2, where you had to create two for each one, a format and a style, and then make sure you selected them both, you won't have to do that anymore. That'll all be in one thing. So that is my very quick preview. There's plenty more coming. I don't want to give away everything right now, but I want to give something special to you who attended today. And thank you for attending. I'll pull my information up one last time. If you are interested in beginning with Lutheran Service Builder, you can speak with one of our software consultants and they can get you up and running. If you are really excited about the new version of Builder, I recommend you start with Lutheran Service Builder 2 right now and start getting up and running. The concepts are all the same, and so you'll have a head start on learning the new version, but we are also going to release the new version to existing customers first before we roll it out to all customers, all potential customers. So signing up for Lutheran Service Builder 2 is your best way to get in the door for the new version. So just a little bit of a sales pitch there if you're interested in that new version. I'm right at time. I don't have any questions in the queue, but if you have any questions, I'll stick around and talk, kind of vamp for a second here. But I wanted to thank you very much for joining today, and I hope that you found this information helpful. I hope that it'll save you time as you prepare for each worship service, as you export your documents or your service folder in a variety of different ways. I hope this has shown you that it's real easy to do that in Lutheran Service Builder. It's not like you're recreating the bulletin 3 times or 4 times. You're doing it once, exporting it different ways. And once you set up these different formats, the next time it's a piece of cake. All you have to do is switch it and click export and run with it. All right, well, there's no more questions, and I'm past time, so I'm going to wrap up today. Thank you very much again for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye.